talking about food as medicine or how we eat, older cultures would eat within season. So this is another aspect of it, right? Because when you
Oh,
eat in season, you're getting the maximum nutrition
okay.
absorbed into the food.
Hi, everyone. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Jeans on HSN, but now host of my own podcast, Too Young to Be Old. I'm going to ask you a question. If you could eat your way back to health with delicious foods instead of chemicals and drugs, if you could work your way through menopause, through herbal teas, and how you position your meals, wouldn't you? I know I would. And we've got someone today, Tsao Lin Moy, who is an expert in Oriental medicine with the belief that you can do it all naturally. Welcome, Choi. Oh my God, I love your philosophy so
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you.
So, did you know that apart from October is a busy month, apart from it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, it is also Menopause Awareness Month. And I know that when I went through menopause, and I went through it early at about 43, it was, whoa, heavy duty, and not so much the sweats, but losing my hair, losing my skin quality, cracks in my voice, muscle cramps, no sleep at night. And now I understand, because you are an expert in this, I could have eaten my way back to a much better place. Explain that to us.
Well, thank you for that question because menopause is something that in the West that's really like treated as a disease and not something as like a natural part of a transition. Just like we go through puberty, there are these hormonal
Ah,
shifts that are happening, and so there are fluctuations. There's moodiness. There's awkward body growth, skin problems, greasy hair, poor sleep. You see, like moody, like kids stay up all night and really they get angry, and, because their brain is being influenced too. And so, one of the big problems is the approach, the mindset that we have towards women's bodies in general, how we're always like dieting and trying to be thin and achieve something that's very unrealistic and really promoting we look at magazines how they actually, even health magazines, that there's like this promoting the thinness and restrictive eating, which is really leads to a lot of these, let's say, eating disorders. And so when women start to experience, hormonal fluctuations, a lot of times they get gaslighted by their physicians. That's another issue. For women when they start to have changes, or they're just like, here, take some hormones, and
yeah.
really, yeah. So looking at like what are all of the things that they've been doing all along to try to manage their body, then ends up being a problem for them. So like the diet sodas, the not eating, like organic foods, eating a lot of processed foods. We get a lot of information about that, oh, this is good for you because it's already prepackaged.
But
But
we don't even in Western medicine, we don't even talk when it comes to menopause. It was all about how many drugs you should take and sleeping pills because your sleep is interrupted. And what were you going to do about hot flashes? And but it was all drug, manufactured drug oriented. There was
yeah,
no discussion about food at
correct.
all. And when you talked about, wow, all this fat is going on in my middle area, my torso, there was total silence. So, what would be the East Asian method of handling menopause? And I do understand that you're saying that there's a different attitude to it. It simply is a doorway to the next layer of life. But for us in the West, especially America, it's like a vanity issue. It's the end of good hair, it's the end of good skin, it's the end of a narrow waist, and so you go for all of these, um, substitute solutions like Sonobello to get the fat sucked out of your middle and starving to death, which I do frequently, and talk to us about your way of doing it.
Okay, that's a great. Okay, so the mindset is a really big part of it, and this is really making a strong connection, a mind body connection with your body. Your body's not your enemy, right? And
Ah,
so this is really like trying to fix it is one of the issues. So if we are agreeing that our waist is supposed to be, like 28 inches, or if we're agreeing that we're supposed to look a certain way, then, you know, that is really like where we start to not really take care of ourselves in the way that we really need to look at. So when we take in food, and this is like a consciousness. So really we first have to have the consciousness, which is clear that this is what your the podcast and what you want to share with the people that are listening is really to become very conscious and aware of how to take care of themselves. So the first thing is not like, oh, I'm doing everything wrong or there's something wrong with me, but is really to make informed choices. And
yeah.
so wherever you are, we start wherever you are. And so one of the things is like we have to look at the stress levels. So worrying a lot about I'm getting old, I'm not, and the messages we get is not going to help, right? And so because the stress levels are the things that cause the cortisol to rise, and then you get all the, around the middle, you get more weight around the middle.
Oh,
uh,
my but chill, my middle went now, my waist was never the best part of my physique, it was always my legs. My waist is 35 inches and my hips are 35 and a half inches. Oh my God. So I'm going to just redirect you a little back
okay, yeah.
to what, in your point of view, how do you pivot your diet? What are the foods that are going to really help you get through menopause? And what am I going to do about that 35-inch waist? Because in America, a 35-inch waist is the definition nationally of obesity.
Okay, so one of the things you need to look at, okay, so in terms, let me address the 35-inch waist thing, is really you look at the ratio, right? So if you have a 35-inch waist, but you got 50-inch hips, then that's a whole different story, right? Then
Yeah.
we're looking at what it means is that there's a lot more of the weight around the middle, or there might be, more fat that's accumulating around the organs. And the thing is we put on fat when we have a lot of toxicity in the body because the body needs to transform chemicals. So
Oh,
things like pesticides and other kinds of
ooh.
toxic stuff needs to be stored, and it gets transformed into, those are the esterols, right? So those actually will bind with fat to be stored. Otherwise, we get really sick. So one of the things is that as our metabolism gets a little slower as we get older, and especially for women because their estrogen lowers, right? But both of, through the menopause, what we have are both of the hormones are kind of fluctuating, just like in puberty. And then eventually when it stops, they kind of balance out. So overall, they're lower, but in the meantime, they're doing this big fluctuation. So, what do I recommend? And this should be not just because someone is going through menopause. Is I recommend really eating more, eating to live. One of those more plant based. You still need to eat some animal protein, but really, like, you should be able to see what your food is, right? If you're having broccoli, you look at the broccoli, you see what it is. One of the things that people don't realize is when they actually prepare their own food, and this I more recently learned is when you chop up the broccoli, you should just kind of like let it sit for a little while because the cancer fighting properties in the broccoli then doesn't get destroyed in the cooking, right? So there's the part of the a little bit of the oxidation makes a difference in terms of the way that we absorb the nutrients.
But
And
for me, I thought, okay, I'm losing estrogen.
yeah.
I should be eating estrogen producing foods like tofu.
Mhm.
Was I right or was
Yeah.
I wrong?
Well, you're looking at what they call phytoestrogens. So we're looking at foods, but in general, when we eat a very balanced diet, mostly veggie, less starch, and very little animal protein,
I
right?
wish.
Because yeah,
Yeah.
um, that we're getting enough of the materials for our body to then create what it needs.
Because when I got breast cancer, that was a big emphasis at Mount Sinai Hospital, which has their rules for diet, most of which you would really agree with. But it was no estrogen producing food. So actually, for 5 years now, and I like tofu. I'm one of those weird Westerners that actually likes tofu. I have completely paranoidally stayed away from it because I'm afraid to raise my estrogen levels again. But during menopause, I thought, well, this is a good solution. I should be, and not for me, not knowing that actually in the meat I was eating, they were pumping the cows full of estrogen and to make them grow bigger and fatter and faster. So it all comes back to how do you balance out what little you know about your diet and what you should be doing to eat to support your life.
Well, I mean, I think you just explained it that you really need to get educated about it. You really need to not just, take for granted what's on the label because we know that usually what is on, I mean, I don't know if everyone knows, I would say what's on the label. And I was thinking about this morning because of business stuff is we just need to provide the minimum amount or say, oh, it's don't eat too much of this or that, but really to obscure really what's in the food and really be like, well, you have a choice, you don't have to buy it. Right? It's like cigarettes, you have like, don't smoke, it's not good for you, right? But people are if you're it's kind of it creates that funny dissonance because like, well, if it's not good for me, then why are they still selling it? So
Because
you
they
can,
can,
yeah,
because they can. And
because you can. Exactly.
yeah, so I tell a story and you've got a good story to tell too. So I can't wait, but I'll tell mine
Go
first.
for it.
So I crave creamy, fatty foods. And I will admit to you that I've had dinners some nights at home where it was 6 strips of thick cut bacon. I mean, you can't get much unhealthier than that. And I love cream cheese. I love cheesecake. I love cream cheese and lox, smoked salmon. So I went to the GP after years of not going because of COVID and also because of breast cancer. And she said, your cholesterol's at a level where you're going to drop dead any minute. I want you on statins immediately. And I thought, I don't want to be on statins. And I know people that take statins and they use the drug as an excuse to have every bad food there is, and say, "Well, I'm on statins, I'm not gonna get heart disease from it." Well, what about diabetes and God knows what else? So, I said to her, "I will eat my way back to health." And she said, "You will never eat your way down to a good level on cholesterol. It's too high." Within 7 months, my cholesterol was perfect. And then a couple of weeks ago, I fell off the wagon. It's fall weather, it's crisp outside, you want substantial. So I ordered a cheesecake online. I thought it was a little one, like tart size, but no, it was actually like 12 inches across. And by the end of the afternoon, I had I was actually eating out of the refrigerator with the refrigerator door open. I'd eaten half the cheesecake, and my only solution was I had to throw the other half out. So I crave those foods, and I wonder why.
Well, I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about, that those in particular taste like mother's milk, right? Like the cheesy
Wow.
custard, the vanilla stuff. And so there also are brain chemicals, such as like dopamine and acetylcholine and GABA, right? And serotonin that are pleasurable. And so these foods also have those signals, which is like part of where addiction comes in, right? Where we have like where
Oh,
the
yeah.
sugar, it fires off, right? So really what I would look at is if that is happening, then we're like, okay, maybe we're missing some other nutrients in our diet that we need to eat, right? So it's not, it's actually a signal of like, hey, you know maybe we need to have some avocado. Maybe that's going to help, because really our body is craving the things that it needs, right? And it knows that, oh, I can get whatever it is in that. But then you're eating the rest of the cheese, you're eating the rest of everything else with it, including like the sugar and the other
Yikes.
things too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now, you said you had a chai latte story to tell.
Yes, yes. And this happened, I could tell you, like, when was it? I have not had a soy chai latte from Starbucks since that date. It might have been like October 11th, or I remember it was like a long time ago, sitting in a lecture about possession. And it was talking about this thing where we had, and really, like, so what I'll preface it, it's like when you have like an unhealthy microbiome in your system, and how you get triggered for cravings and stuff. And this fellow, who he's does these what do you call it, translations of ancient texts, he was talking about, this is like something in ancient Chinese texts where they would talk about things where, when you're have an addiction to something, that you have this kind of relationship with it. And he said, it could be, when these little creatures in your body, suddenly will pop a picture of a cookie in your head in the middle of nowhere. And then suddenly you're like, oh, maybe I should have a cookie, because,
Yeah.
or create these chemicals to get you emotionally upset, that then you want to soothe yourself. And he said, it could be something small, a thing you do every single day. And so here I'm sitting there, and in my hand, I've got my chai latte. And I looked at it because I would get this soy chai, so vanilla, the soy chai, no water, just the soy and the chai. And I would have one of them, and all day long, I would just add a little water, I would sip it. I would add water, I would sip it. And I would notice that, if I was walking somewhere, I'd go like, oh, there's a Starbucks over there. I haven't had my chai latte yet. And I realized suddenly, oh my God, I've been like slow, because it's only one a day, but I was slowly, having little hits of this sweetness. and it has, like, artificial sweetener and, like, a sucralose thing, and then immediately, like, "Oh my god." So I stopped it, and then I also said, "You know what? I need to heal my gut. I'm going to,
Ooh,
start to introduce some probiotics to really like think a little bit more about it." And can I tell you, must have lost like 15 pounds of
no.
inflammation. I didn't realize like
Oh,
how much inflammation was in my system because you don't know, you're a little bit squishy, right? So when you're in your 40s and stuff, you like ever, you can go to the doctor and they go, "Oh, it's normal when you hit a certain age,
I hate that.
to start, but it was like everything was a little bit. And that was when I was like, "Oh, wow," because it was really the thing that would trigger me to think like, "Oh, I didn't have one today," or,
And you
"Oh."
deserve one. Or, you think to yourself, "Well, I deserve it."
Yeah, or I'm just having one a
"Oh, I'm just
day,
having
and I
one."
would I would milk it the whole day, I would just keep adding a little hot water to dilute it, but what I was doing, I was, like, really it was like I might as well have, put an IV into my arm. It was like a slow drip
So,
of this
what's
stuff.
I know my system needs probiotics, and I try to eat at a low gluten level because I've got initial, um, arthritis in my knees, that one of
Sure.
them is killing me. And so I don't need any more inflammation than I've already got. But how do you approach probiotics naturally with food? Or do you suggest a supplement? Or I'm lost there. I don't know what to do, but I know I need to do it.
Okay, so what I, suggest to my patients is they need to, well, if you're going to do it with food, it's going to take a long time. So I'm like, you do both. You really need to do both. And most people of a certain age probably had their tonsils out, probably took penicillin, probably got given some antibiotic, something, which then what you realize is that was the thing. It could have been 50 or 60 years ago that
Whoa.
actually created the imbalance. So
Wow.
slowly, slowly, it like knocked everything out of your system. And then slowly, slowly over time, we're eating certain foods. We get a little food poisoning. We get a little this, we get a little that. We got our hormones that may stimulate certain, types of bacteria, et cetera, et cetera. And then at a certain point, all of a sudden, we're having problems with our digestion.
Yeah.
And so really need to kind of build it back. So I recommend usually something that has 8 to 10 different strains in it, like a variety, and then also to at least, 50 to 80 billion to really start to do that. And then in addition, we're like no sugars, no artificial sweeteners because those actually
Yeah.
cause problems,
I
right?
can't
Those are
live
those
without it.
those are the things that, once you get off of it, you actually realize, like, how sweet stuff is. Even broccoli, you like, like, food will taste differently.
But am I gonna use a probiotic supplement, like, I think there's something called Align, where you put a teaspoonful of it in your coffee every morning. What is your preferred method of
I prefer it in a capsule. I mean, I
okay,
just prefer it in a capsule, but also then you get, you have things that are fermented in your food. I mean, I actually make my own ginger beer. I started doing that. So like
ooh,
and use like the natural yeast or whatever that's actually on the ginger to create, and it's, so it has a little bit of fermentation. But there, with our
kombucha?
it's like a
Kombucha?
kombucha. Kombucha
Kombucha.
is actually with black tea. And so, um, that's something, but, for some people, they can make them very gassy. But the idea, I mean, you can have a little sauerkraut, you could have pickles, right? You could have, pickled vegetables, which you can actually put on your salad or have it on the side. And, in Asian culture, usually at the very beginning, they'll have a little bit of, and you probably remember when you were in Hong Kong, you'd get a little dish there, and there might be some little pickled cabbage or a
Always,
little bit
yeah.
before the meal. You take it, it's a little bit sour, and it starts the your saliva You chew it, it starts saliva, and then your stomach acid begins so that when you begin to eat, your or it helps with digestion, right? And also the pickle has a little bit of the probiotic in it, right? And the way, food is prepared, right? A lot of fermentation. So we look at like miso in like there are all types of miso or kimchi or little things that are added for flavoring also have the fermentation that actually helps with your gut.
So I stopped having miso also because I understood that it produced estrogen, and
I
I'm
mean, I don't really know. Okay, so I think there hasn't been
was that just
the
legend? Yeah,
okay, so miso is a fermentation of a soy product.
yeah.
And really, we would look at, in Asia, so many, it's so predominant, not only tofu, but there's tempeh, there's edamame,
Oh, I
there's the
know.
miso, there's like all of these different ways in which, because soy or tofu, soy is actually a complete protein, right? So
Yes.
we're looking at, cultures that traditionally were more vegetarian and even vegan that would need to, have their protein, right? And so talking about food as medicine or how we eat, older cultures would eat within season. So this is another aspect of it. Right? Because when you
Oh,
eat in season, you're getting the maximum nutrition
okay.
absorbed into the food. And really, the idea of doing combining certain foods, such as in Chinese cooking, you always see like garlic and ginger. So, garlic is one of the things that will kill parasites, and ginger is something that warms the stomach and helps with digestion. So, you start to look at the way foods are cooked and prepared, and oftentimes a lot of quick sautéing or steaming so that you don't destroy the nutrients. We don't overcook the food. It has to be cooked enough that kill certain bacteria, but you also allow for the nutrients to still be there so that you absorb. So this is like, I mean, in the West, we call it food medicine. Well, when you look at certain cultures, they're very much, close to the land of the food that they're eating, and eating within season means that they're actually working with nature and in cycles. And one thing I wanted to just say before when we were talking about menopause, before I forget, women's health has a cycle to it. The way our body has a monthly kind of a curve cycle, so it's not a flat line. And so one of the problems with the issues from a allopathic perspective, it's always looking at everything being like static, like,
Yeah,
oh,
or
your
or
levels.
you should somehow be able to remain the same. I was just saying that with,
Right.
and I hate to interrupt you,
No,
but
no, I just wanted to remember, like, kinda, like, put that out because our
yeah.
body is not like this. It actually, it has, like, the waves just like our sleep cycle has a wave to it, right? Our digestion has a wave to it. Like, our whole body has this wave, and when we're working with it and not against it, then it's smooth, right? We know. It gets cold out, you put on a jacket, right? We don't complain,
Huh.
"Oh, like, why is it cold?" Like, we really go like, "Okay, we know that it gets darker earlier. We know that we need to eat warmer food." Connect with ourselves, right? And environment.
I said this to somebody, and I don't mean to criticize any of my friends that are mothers, but when I hear, and when I grew up, there was no fast food, and if you didn't, my mother actually used to take me to a kosher chicken shop where all these guys with little hats on, yarmulkes, were running around, and it was kosher food, and they're praying on the food. But the chickens were all running around, and you would say, "Okay, I want a chicken." And they would butcher the chicken right there. And so as a child, I had a sense of where the food came from as a live animal and how it got defeathered and declawed, and then it went into a big soup bowl, and you made chicken soup from scratch, and it took 7 or 8 hours, and the house filled up with this wonderful aroma. And now when I talk to friends who have young children, they're like, "What, are you crazy? We go to Chick-fil-A." I mean, so you have an entire generational, um, ignorance of where food actually comes from, the
Right.
fact that it was a live animal unless it's vegetarian, and I do not, apart from one person, our producer on this podcast, I do not know one person that is vegetarian. Everybody is a carnivore, and I always get lectured like, "You need to eat red meat." Well, I'm almost 80 years old. I'm not so sure I need to eat red meat. But let's put it this way. I'm way on that other side of menopause, but it is Menopause Awareness Month. That's October. And thank God it is, so at least women can talk about it. From menopause, the beginning of it, on into deep maturity, which is what I will call myself rather than an old lady. Um, what are our best bets for eating to not just stay alive, but really support our body and prosper? What would be your final words
I would
on
s
that as an
I would
expert?
say really, like, you wanna eat organic. You wanna, like, and really pick high quality food and really stay away from processed things, even if it's supposedly, like, processed health foods, like shakes and stuff. I mean, too often, people are
Oh,
using, uh, supplements, and really, I know we talked about this at another time, where a supplement is really to supplement what might be missing in your diet, not substitute.
ha!
And what I notice is, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I just drink this shake and I put in my, microgreens and I do this and and it's actually a lot harder on your system than going through really, like, chewing your food, using the enzymes, and allowing that digestive cycle to happen. In a weird way, the way we eat now is very close to how we raise, animals for, production, like for meat production, right? Everything is all kind of put into some goopy thing that you put in your blender and then you swallow it down and,
Whoa.
I mean, it's very efficient, like from a perspective of, "Oh, we don't need we're just gonna like, have people, get accustomed to eating powdered foods because, it'll sit on a shelf." I mean, I might be a little bit extreme.
I don't think you are being extreme. I
But
just I
yeah.
think that most people, um, who, let's say, at this point are 20 years old, 25 years old, they have, unless you live in the middle of the country on a dairy farm or something, you have very little, meshing, with where the food came from, what it was intended for, and quite frankly, how it should taste. And
Mhm.
so you get used to, um, processed food, you get used to high salt content, you get used to all these chemicals. And then somebody said to me the other day, and he's a great cook, but he was making, some kind of chili, and I said, "Oh, you put ground beef in there?" And he said, "No, I used Impossible Burger." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Take a look at the label. If it is a paragraph 8 inches long of derivatives and chemicals and preservatives, I think it's probably better to just use meat." So as a final commentary, what is your number one piece of advice for eating to live a healthful, productive life as a female from 55, 50 years on?
Oh, the number 1. Oh, what a tricky question you have here.
Oh, but
Oh,
it's
the number
interesting.
1. Well, you know, again, I would say eat whole foods, and I also really
Perfect.
mean, yeah, whole foods. No artificial stuff, like, really, like, steer clear of it, and in particular, the things that are, like, the diet, fat-free, like, all of that, because that has it's the chemicals in it, just like you were talking about the impossible stuff that, there's so many chemicals in there, and you're not getting nutrients, like, that's it's
That's
fat-free, it's also you're
perfect.
going, like, no nutrient. I'm going so really, and I think for women, they need to not fall into that trap of
Yeah, and it's a very interesting month, October, because not only is it Menopause Awareness Month, but it's obviously Breast Cancer Awareness Month as well. And when I had breast cancer and I had really excellent care, couldn't have been better, not possible. But obviously I was given a lot of steroids, a lot of chemicals in chemo, as in chemical therapy, and it's taken me almost 4 years to even come close to normalizing my body again and getting all of that out of my system. So I am a big proponent of
yeah,
eating whole foods, eating natural, and actually finding joy and creativity in preparing those foods.
exactly. The 10 fingers of virtue, like, it's really you preparing your own it's a gift to yourself, it's also a practice, and and that is something, to appreciate that you're creating it for
Oh,
yourself.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not a good cook, but I'm an enthusiastic cook. For one, so I only have me to judge my meals because most of the men I've been with in my life were like, hey, let's go out to dinner tonight. If they were faced between me cooking a meal and having something they enjoy. So, Joe, I want to thank you so
Thank you.
much. Really a fascinating discussion about, as an aging female, how to bolster and foundationally take care of your health. I thank you so very much. And we will list how to get in touch with Cho because she has her own practice of Chinese medicine and very knowledgeable and kind lady to come on and explain it all to us. Thank you,
Thank
my
you. Thank
friend.
you.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.